Hello, friends, and welcome to your Monday edition of the Kings of Anglia Ipswich Town podcast, brought to you in association with our friends at Manscaped and also those excellent fellows at Ginger Pickle. Friends, it's another one of those Mondays, I'm afraid. Ipswich Town didn't win, they didn't lose, but we've not been able to sit here on a Monday talking up a town win for more than a month now. I've just been looking back. They haven't won on a Saturday since they beat Rotherham in the FA Cup. That seems a lifetime ago. Anyway, friends, I'm Mark Heath. I've risen from my bed, having fallen asleep watching the Super Bowl last night. I'm fully caffeinated to join my best friends, Stuart Watson and Roscoe, the Prospect Halls. Stewie, how are you on this fairly average Monday morning in terms of all things Ipswich Town?
I'm okay. What time did you make it to before you fell asleep on your sofa?
It's pathetic. It's grimly pathetic and predictable, friends. Every year, the Super Bowl is like my Christmas Day. It's the one night of the year that I have to myself where I can just enjoy it. I get all my snacks, get the drinks lined up, and I sit. And I fully intend to watch the whole game. But every year, I fall asleep at some point because I've had too many scoops. And last night, I can't remember what time I fell asleep. Not because I was that drunk, but I just can't remember falling asleep. I can remember waking up at around 2 a.m. and it was midway through the third quarter. So I'd missed the Rihanna halftime show, which is one of the things I was most excited about. I quickly turned the telly off and trudged upstairs to bed, feeling thoroughly ashamed of myself. And I still don't know who's won. So after this, I'm going to be going and catching up with the game that I should have watched last night. Every year it happens. I'm old and grimly, predictably pathetic now. Ross, you're young and not grimly, predictably pathetic. You've got a new trick with the mic, which I particularly enjoy. And you're tearing the arse out of it, so to speak. You're doing it all the time now. The old sleight of
works though.
It's your new trademark. How are you?
I'm very well. Last year, actually, I went to a place in Ipswich to watch the Super Bowl. This year, I just went, nah, can be asked this year. But yeah, I'm very well, thank you. And yeah, the mic thing, I think after a while, I'll probably, get sick of it. But it's just a nice little trick if I want to.
Can we add to it though? I mean, that is good. Don't get me wrong, but can we
chuck it at somebody?
Like Stu, one of his best skills is spinning a pen on his thumb, which we've not seen actually. It's thinking about it now, it's one of the main drawbacks of no longer being in an office with you all. I used to just sit and watch Stu spin a pen because he used to sit next to me, and he'd do it like it became mesmeric, like one of those metronomes. You just do it. So can we spin the mic, Ross? Can we get the mic spin going?
Or next thing is maybe someone just throws it to me and I have to try to catch it with one hand and go, here I am, game day.
I mean, that is expensive bit of kit, so that is maybe I have to fill in some sort of
short distance throw, not too far away. Just enough for me to just catch it in one hand and then boom, hello guys, welcome to game day and all that.
I look forward to seeing this develop as the season goes on. It may be the only really interesting thing we've got to talk about for the rest of the season. Let's be honest. Right then, let's kick into it, shall we? Ipswich Town played Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend. We bigged it up. We got very excited about it. We said it was a game they couldn't afford to lose. They didn't lose, but they bloody didn't win it either, Stewie. There's lots to talk about, but let's open with your first thoughts on the whole game. I've got a theory I want to share with you at some point as well. See what you think. But get started, Stu. Kick us off.
An absolute emotional roller coaster that game was, particularly the first half. I don't know if I can remember a game with so many sort of ups and downs in a short period of time. That's a lie. I can. Charlton away, stoppage time, which probably leads us on to a bigger point about Ipswich dealing with emotional moments in games is becoming a bit of a theme of this season. Penalty miss, 2-0 down, absolutely rocking at that stage. Could have been 3. Crowd was ready to turn. Peach of a free kick. You won't see many better free kicks than that in world football, which was an absolute lifeline on half-time. Finished the first half bang on top, carried that into the second half, deservedly got an equaliser, and then some familiar themes about lots of pressure, but not quite turning it into goals. And all in all things said, a draw was probably about right, and Ipswich are drawing too many games at the moment, aren't they?
They surely are. They're definitely not winning enough games. So is that 1 win in 7 now, 4 in the last 14? That's not top 2 form, is it? Rossi, your opening thoughts on this? I did enjoy, by the way, considering we talked about our favourite type of goals on the last pod. We saw 2 of them, as discussed. We saw the angled kind of bullet lifted header from Smith, And we also saw the peach of a free kick, which you were waxing lyrical about, from Broadhead. In fact, you actually said we don't really score goals like that. And then Julie Minty steps up.
Yeah, technically we've got two free kicks. I know there's a massive deflection on Leif Davis, but he'll claim it as his goal. But yeah, I've got mixed feelings really. I was looking forward to this game. Two of the big dogs in the division going head to head, big crowd. But yeah, we didn't start really well. Dreadful first start half. Chaplin's penalty, we'll get onto that in a bit, I'm sure. But yeah, we got a great comeback to be 2-0 down, where I thought, oh God, it's going to be one of those days. But thankfully not. And just mixed feelings. But as Stu said, a roller coaster of a game and just two really good teams going head to head.
Right then, shall we talk about the minutiae of the game then, Stu? Let's start with the team, because I'll be honest with you, when 2 o'clock came around and it flashed up on my phone, I looked excitedly at the lineup. I then went, Freddie the Dapo's not starting. That's really disappointing. I really wanted Freddie to start the game. I can't see an argument that he shouldn't start the game, other than the fact you just brought Hurst in the window and you got to play him. But for me, I was very underwhelmed by Hurst starting up top. I want to see Freddie. And also, of course, we talked about starting Caden Jackson, and we saw Wes Burns. What did you make of the side, Stewie, when you saw it?
Wasn't a million miles off what I talked about in the piece. Going into the game, I thought Cameron Burgess might come back in for this one. I don't know if George Edmondson is an injury, because he wasn't in the squad at all, though that's not unusual, because McKenna's talked about whoever doesn't make it as a centre half in the team probably won't be in the squad, because he wants attacking options on the bench. But I thought this was a game for Burgess, given the Michael Smith factor up front. We talked about Davis Lee being a close call, but it would probably be Davis that got the nod. That was correct. We talked about Clark and Broadhead. If you've spent big money on those two players in January, these are the games that you've signed them for. So they both got in. It was that right side and striker positions that we talked about being big calls, and they tipped the way of Hurst and Burns. I guess Burns is kind of big game moments this season probably tipped it in his favour, and Hurst, they tracked him for a long time. They wanted him. They probably thought the Sheffield Wednesday motivation factor was something. He'd had a good game at Burnley up in midweek, so as I said, I was kind of okay with either of those starting up front. Personally, I would have gone with Freddie and probably Caden in those roles, but it went the other way. Tight decisions. I think George Hurst really wanted that penalty when Ipswich got it in the 19th minute. We talked about him having a point to prove. He went to go and get the ball, but Connor Chaplin took it. And he's gone for the delay didn't help him. I don't think it was one of those ones where the ref has to go over and speak to the linesman for quite a long time. And that always allows a bit of doubt to creep in, I think, for everybody. And Connor Chaplin's gone for probably the safe option. Sometimes if there's a bit of nerves jangling, which is understandable given the stakes and the crowd and everything, safe option is maybe to go down the middle and otherwise if you go for power, you can end up blazing them high and over and whatnot. So it goes down as a good save for me from the goalkeeper, rather than yes, there's better penalties, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was a complete fluff on another day that rolls straight down the middle of the pitch and middle of the goal and no one's saying anything. But yeah, George Hurst wanted that penalty, I think.
Should we talk a bit about the penalty? Because obviously that was a fairly major incident that attracted a lot of chat. Stu, have you got a pen that you're playing with?
Sorry, no, it's a little, it's like a little...
what is that?
Clip
is that a hair
things.
Clip? You don't need one of them.
I don't even know where that's come from. I've got all manner of junk. There's a little clothes peg here, all sorts of stuff.
Super. Well, if you could stop playing with it, or mute, make the choice, because it's not good for the audio. Rossi, the penalty. Clearly, something happened to Wes Burns. You can't. Yeah, well, it looked like an elbow. Yeah, and then Johnson disappears into a crowd and escapes any sort of punishment. Josh Windass says that the ref didn't know what happened and therefore should have just let play carry on. He said Johnson apparently told him that he got caught up with a guy competing for a ball, and therefore it was just 50-50 and the ref should let it go. You've got to let us play, essentially, was what Windass was saying, which I suppose he would say. Darren Moore said he didn't see it, but he assumed the ref got it right. Straight out of the Football League playbook there, Darren. And McKenna, what did McKenna say actually? I didn't see, Stu. What did McKenna say about the penalty? Not a lot.
Nothing actually. It was remiss of us not to ask him about it. We spoke to Leif Davis about the incident, and similar description to what you've just outlined from the Sheffield Wednesday end, in that the referee clearly didn't see it, understandably, because all eyes were tracking the ball towards the edge of the box. It's an off the ball incident. The linesman on the far side of the pitch does really well to spot it, because he's on the opposite side through a crowd of bodies. I don't think we've seen any kind of footage that is completely definitive yet, but it's pretty clear that the two are sort of tangling off the ball, and I think there's a couple of they're tangling, and there's a couple of frustrated sort of get off me throws of the arms backwards from Marvin Johnson, and one of them obviously catches Wes around the face neck area, and he goes down, and they do well to spot it and give it.
There's a great picture actually that Steve Waller, one of our snappers, sent to me yesterday. He's going back through his pictures, and he had a picture of Johnson and Burns tussling early on in the 6th minute. In fact, it looks like Burns is dodging a punch from Johnson. I'm assuming that's not what's happening, but it's a good picture. Rossi, what did you make of the penalty, and what did you make of the starting lineup? Because my thoughts with Freddie are, I just feel kind of sorry for him. I don't know what more he can do. He's just become like he's the player of the month from January. He's a man in form. He does well against Sheffield Wednesday. He's feeling the love from the fans, and then he's been benched the last 2 games.
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe McKenna's gone with the narrative. Oh, George Hurst against his former club, played well on Tuesday against Burnley, but yeah, surely you got to start Ladapo for this one. This is prime for Ladapo starting, and he'll been fired up as well. So I was a bit disappointed when I saw the team and saw George Hurst signing. I know Stu's mentioned it, and everyone knows. We've been chasing him for ages. So McKenna's now finally got his man. So I'm sure he wants to start him for big games as well. But I think Ladapo was always, for me, what I wanted him to start. And I think the rest pretty much named itself, really. There was that talk point with Greg Lee, maybe Shawnee Aluko maybe starting because of his great performance on against Burnley. Even Caden Jackson maybe a start because last time he played against Hills, against Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough, he played really well. But yeah, I would have started Ladapo, but Ladapo really scored, didn't he? At the end there to actually win the game. We'll get on to later. And then the penalty itself, as Stu said, good save by Cameron Dawson. He's actually a really good, I think, a penalty saver. I think he's got a good record. But he kept it with his legs. But yeah, Chaplin, I thought with a big occasion, he's one of those, players who wants to be up for those big occasions and just whack it down the middle, my friend. Just whack it down the middle. But no. But yeah, not great penalty, but good save overall.
So Town, can you say miss a penalty? It seems unfair to say miss a penalty, but that is essentially what happened. It was saved, it was missed, whatever. And then, Stu, they find themselves 2-0 down. What about the goals? Because neither of the goals I thought would. I know the first goal was an excellent goal. Don't get me wrong, brilliant cross, even better header. But neither of them were defended that well, were they?
No, the first one is a lapse in concentration from a quickly taken free kick, which is all the more frustrating given that Ipswich had spoken about Sheffield Wednesday's desire to do that in the build-up. Leif Davis says that's something that they'd looked at as a squad. They weren't alert to that ball work down the line, and then from there you have to say it's real quality. It's a whipped cross off the weaker foot of Josh Windass, and it's a fantastic header from Michael Smith running towards the near post, and to get the power and precision back across the goalkeeper into that top corner. That's a top class goal. And then Ipswich really struggled emotionally from that moment onwards. 2 big body blows. You fail to score a penalty. You go 1-0 down. How are you going to handle this? And the answer was not very well at all. The second goal was a really, really poor one. A multitude of sort of small errors adding up, really, in terms of not dealing with the long ball into the corner, not stopping the cross, not dealing with the cross well enough, not picking up the late runner into the box. I thought that was a really poor goal. And at 2-0 down, they were rocking big time. There was 5 minutes where they looked all over the show. Smith almost goes round the goalkeeper, takes a heavy touch. That could have very easily been 3-0. And as Darren Moore says, if that goes in, it's probably game, set and match against the team of their experience in the form that they're in. I think the whole mood would have really turned angry at that stage. They would have been booed off at half time, no doubt. But again, the match took another swing the other way.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Rossi, your pitch side, so you have a kind of privileged position in that you're actually close enough to see the players' facial reactions and probably hear them talk to each other. In that period where they were rocking, did you notice any difference in kind of body language? Was there a heightened tensions or kind of any kind of cross words exchange, anything like that? Was it visible from where you are that they're breathing a bit here?
Yeah, definitely. When Lily went 3-0, Wolford didn't do himself really well there. I watched back the highlights this morning just to always good too. And yeah, that was thankfully Michael Smith had a bad touch and didn't score from there. But Wolford didn't have a great moment there. But yeah, good thing I don't think players dropped their heads. I think they knew. I know definitely Wolford actually was like not very happy. But I think everyone else, they just got themselves up for it and they needed to get that goal before half time because, as Stu said, there would be massive boos. And we've been trying as being as positive as we can this season. I'm sure Town fans, but against a promotion rival in a big game like this, to go 3-0 down, that wouldn't have been good. But thankfully Broadhead was there to get the goal. But on the opposite goal, of course, on the attacking side, when they concede, I'm a bit further away. But yeah, when the second went in, I just thought, this is not going to be a good day. But we have got a few leaders on the pitch, but sometimes I think that's when you need to step up and find that goal.
Yeah, which they did, Stu. So let's go from the down of being 2-0 down to the up of the roller coaster, which is first of all finding this goal from Broadhead and then finding an equaliser after half time. Great character, great resilience, we have to say, to be 2-0 down against a team like Sheffield Wednesday. We haven't conceded a goal in the league all year. So to then go and score 2 to come back from a pretty deep pit at home shows great character. And you mentioned Morsey there. I'm sure I read something from one of you boys that said Morsey was quite vocal in the dressing room at half time. I think was it via Leif Davis?
Yeah, that was Davis who spoke after the match, and he talked. He's obviously asked what did the manager say at half time to get you going, and he said, well, it was as much to do with the skipper as it was the manager, and so yeah, he's played his role as captain there at half time, but that half-time team talk would have been very, very different if that goal hadn't gone in. McKenna talked about them getting back to details and making it their game again. Sheffield Wednesday, you could see from when the two teams lined up at the very start, you could see the height difference between the sides. They landed the Giants, not only Smith, but Aidan Flint and Dominic Iorfa. And they just looked at a taller, more physical side than Ipswich. And they made it that sort of physical battle in the first half during those most difficult moments for Ipswich. McKenna sort of referenced it at the end of the game as well, their experience as well compared to Ipswich's. He talked, we got a few young players in there, and when you think about it, Davis, Clark, Humphreys, there are some still sort of green young players in that Ipswich Town team, which were dealing with those sort of big crowds, big moments like this for the first times in their careers. So to have turned this game around does deserve huge credit. It needed that moment of magic from Broadhead to change the mood. And then Ipswich, to be fair, settled. And they were bang on top at the end of that first half. And, wave after wave of attack, huge roar from the crowd. And they managed to carry that into the second period and make it their game of football. And Sheffield Wednesday were then suddenly the team that were reeling and rocking and on the back foot. It was Chaplin's direct run that won the free kick, which, obviously big deflection from Leif Davis, but 2-2. And then you're thinking, go on and win it from here. You still got loads of time. And they just weren't quite able to. Lots of similar story of lots of possession, lots of front foot football, forced lots of corners, but weren't able to kind of be ruthless and clinical when on top. And then in the end, Sheffield Wednesday probably finished the stronger side, where it got back to being a bit of an aerial bombardment, lots of long throws into the box and crosses into the box. And to be fair to Ipswich, when we've talked about at that stage, I was thinking, don't go and lose it now in 90 plus minute defeat, how flattening that would have been. So again, that deserves a lot of credit, I think, for the way that, okay, Ipswich didn't win it, but, they defended really strongly towards the end when it would have been easy to sort of crumble in those latter stages as well. So there is lots of good stuff to take out of this game, but it just leaves us, Andy used the phrase, in limbo land a little bit. We talked about before this match, is it must win? And I said, well, it's must not lose, but a draw could leave us here, sitting here on Monday, having the same old conversations. And so it is.
We'll have that conversation shortly, Stu. Rossi, they didn't lose it, but they almost did. They tried to by leaving 6'9" Aidan Flint completely alone at the back stick.
Yeah, Aidan Flint is he's a monster of a man, he is. And as I said, Stuart Watson's sort of favourite hairy-ass defender. And with the bandana on his head. And that was the moment where you think, just fought back, 2-0 down against a very good Sheffield Wednesday side. To score 2 goals, I know they're free kicks and set pieces, but Sheffield Wednesday defence is solid this year. They're really up there. It proves, sadly, we're just not a 90-minute team. We play in fits and starts. We have bad moments, we have good moments. At one stage, we were losing every challenge, every ball. We were getting bullied because, Wednesday were a big team. I remember when they both were walking out, you got little Barry Bannon, but then you got the rest, just massive. And we've got, a few tall players ourselves. But thankfully, no, we got a bit of the rubber to green this game because we got the deflection for Lee Davis's goal. And then thankfully, Aidan Flint, because he had 2 chances. He, had a header, then he volleyed it over. So, but we can't let players just have that amount of space and score. But thankfully they didn't, and we had a chance at the end, but we just couldn't find that winner, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I've seen that sort of 90-minute performance thing mentioned by quite a few people. I see where you're coming from. I don't know how realistic it is to expect a team to be kind of dominant for 90 minutes, but it's about making the spells in games that you do have count. Yeah. And that's been the sort of a recurring theme of this season. Ipswich have always got a really good spell in them during a game, but do they make them count enough times? And you talk about that end of certainly the first 20 minutes of the second half. Are they ruthless enough when they've got a team on the ropes? Can they land those killer blows? And it has happened on occasions, but probably not enough times. Sheffield Wednesday was always going to be there was always going to be periods of pain in a game against Sheffield Wednesday. It was always going to be this sort of two-throw game. As McKenna says, 2 draws against Sheffield Wednesday probably isn't going to define the final picture. It's the other games beforehand. It's the Fleetwoods, it's the Cheltenhams, it's the Lincolns. It's all those games that have kind of added up to the frustration of a draw against Sheffield Wednesday, isn't it? Rather than this as a sort of individual draw on its own.
How are we feeling about the wider picture then? I know Lee Davis again after the game says essentially that we want or aren't ruthless enough, and he actually name checked Freddie by name, saying other sides would have put that away, and that's what we need to do. And he goes on to say that the automatics, though they're not gone, we've just got to put together a winning run, which we feel like we've been saying for most of this year. Town have got to go on a run, and we said a few podcasts ago we referred to them having to be almost perfect, and they've definitely not been that. A draw at Cambridge and then fighting back from 2-0 down to draw. Yes, that's great, but they still didn't win the game. There's 16 games left. They're still 6 points behind Sheffield Wednesday. They've got a game in hand. Plymouth are now 8 points clear at the top. Bolton are level on points now. Yes, they've played a game more, but they absolutely tonked Peterborough 5-0 away. So in terms of the way things are looking, things are starting to edge away from Town on the top 2, and that kind of middle, the playoff spots are starting to come back together. Derby lost for the first time this century, which I suppose is one good thing at Wickham. How are you feeling about it, Stu? 16 games left.
I'm starting to increasingly think that there's just something missing in terms of what's required to finish in the top 2, and it's really hard to put your finger on it. There's so much good that is there. We enjoy watching this team. We've seen what they can do against the likes of Burnley. There is a feeling that if Ipswich can get over the line, they would be well equipped to kick on again in the Championship. Although I do think we're probably underestimating how difficult the Championship is. There will be teams that make it difficult to play in the Championship to a higher standard than the spoilers in League One. We've seen Ipswich against a struggling Rotherham in the Championship. We've seen them against a proper footballing side in Burnley at the top. Be interested to see what they were like against a Millwall or someone like that. But I digress. It just feels like something's just not quite there. I don't know what it is. Is it an emotional, mental element to things? Bit of ruthlessness at the top end of the pitch, concentration levels at the back. For a long, long time, I kept saying on this podcast with quite a lot of faith that the stats would bear out, that Ipswich create a load of chances, they don't concede many, and over the course of a 46 game season that would come to bear. And here we are still now heading down the last 16 games talking about the fine margin games just not quite tipping their way enough times, I think, for a top 2 push. 8 points behind Plymouth, could be 9 if behind Sheffield Wednesday if they win their game in hand. You're talking about sort of bettering two teams' results on 4 or 5 occasions to catch them up. It's a big ask from here, isn't it? Part of me just thinks almost the top 2 chase going down to the wire might not be helpful from a psychological point of view, because if we keep up this hope that, we could still get in there, I don't know if that's going to help from a mentality point of view going into the playoffs. It's almost like if we can get our heads around the fact that it may well be the playoffs from here on in, it's about, right, how do we get ourselves prepared as ready as possible for those playoff games? That's kind of where I'm at the moment. I don't know if that sounds a little bit defeatist, but 4 wins from the last 14, is it, we said, in the league? And we're talking about probably needing 10, 11, 12 wins from the last 16. That's a hell of a turnaround in form, isn't it?
Let me hit you with my theory then, because it feels like a good juncture. So from the same man who brought you the all fell apart at Charlton theory, which is still bearing out, I've got to say. If you look at the record since, it's not been good. Right then, settle in, friends. This is an analogy, and it comes from my sport, the world of fighting, MMA, the best sport on earth. Obviously, I do a lot of commentary of fights. And when you're commentating on fights, particularly well-matched fights, you're picking up on what one fight is doing well, what the other fight is doing well, what they could be doing, how the story of the fight, all that kind of narrative around it. And occasionally in these fights, you realize that you're saying about one fighter, you're kind of praising, God, they're so tough. He or she, they're so tough. God, that intestinal fortitude, they're losing this fight, but they're staying in it. They're still competitive. They're still finding a way to be in it. And eventually, as you get towards the end of a fight, you realize that's kind of damning with faint praise, saying, God, how tough they are, how competitive they are in this fight. They're not winning it. They ain't going to win this fight, but they're still in the fight. Essentially, that is the lowest form of praise. Like if you're a fighter, being tough is kind of the minimum expected intangible. To step into a cage or a ring, you better be tough, otherwise you're going to get found out. And I feel like there's a kind of a comparison there with Town, that we're saying, God, yeah, they didn't win that game, but they didn't lose it. God, they showed great character. Well, they're competitive with these top sides. They ain't winning them. They don't beat these top sides. They've only won one of the games against the top sides. And essentially, what you're saying with that praise, that they're so tough. This woman, this man, they're so tough. They take so many shots. Essentially, you're saying at the end of it all, they're not good enough. They're not good enough to win that fight. Ipswich Town, I'm starting to think, and this is a high bar because they're third in League One, clearly, but this is the situation we're at with Ipswich Town. We want high standards. We should be pushing up there. Ipswich Town, I'm starting to think, just aren't good enough to go up top 2. They're competitive. Yes, they've got heart and they've got resilience. But when push comes to shove and they've got to get results and they've got to beat these sides, they need to beat them. They ain't doing it. They're not good enough to go up top 2. What do you reckon?
Yeah, got to agree with that because we haven't been able to beat Plymouth. We haven't been able to beat Sheffield Wednesday this year. So, and do you know what? The draws have gone under the radar, really, haven't they? 11 draws out of 30 league games. Of course, some of those were winning positions, Fleetwood, Charlton, and I'm sure there's other examples. But Sheffield Wednesday are a very good team. They're champions. I'm saying it now. They're going up as champions. And I think a lot of people think Plymouth will fall away. I think they've still got a chance to, but then I don't know. Derby, but like Bolton, they're coming out of nowhere. That was a massive win against Peterborough, as you mentioned earlier. Their 5,000th game, I think, in their history, and to win 5-0 is a nice little, a good headline there. But it could be right there, Heathy, mate. Could be right because there's some good. We've got some good players. We strength in January, but do we have players who can get over that line and get into the top two? I haven't just yet given up on top two. I said I've been going with my heart this year, but every time they have a little slip up here and there, I have those doubts, and I don't want playoffs. I think that's my as well. I just don't want playoffs because it's a lottery. But yeah, maybe they are not good enough.
I should say, by the way, clearly that's the highest possible standard that we're talking about here. When I say they're not good enough, this is a side who are third in League One and at the very least will be in the playoffs. But in terms of the standards that everyone talks about at the club, and Ashton and being relentless and game changer and all the money they've got and the players they've signed, that has to be the level going up top two. And there's no shame in not being good enough. If you've given everything and ultimately you're just not good enough to win a fight or to go up top two, there's no shame in that. But equally, there has to start to be some kind of level of acceptance, which I think is what you were kind of touching on, Stu, that, do you know what? Actually, realistically, we are looking now at Town being in the playoffs. We may not like that, but that feels like it's the way it's going. And if they are going to be in the playoffs, that acceptance that that's where it's heading, that they're not really good enough to go up top two, but they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to have a chance still to go up. I feel like I agree with you there, Stu, what you're saying, that kind of acceptance that, right, we're going to go again. The playoffs are coming. Top two's gone. I know technically it's not gone, but realistically, we have to start thinking about the playoffs and how we're going to handle that. Because again, this is not a side, unfortunately, that handle pressure, big games that well, which doesn't really bode brilliantly for the playoffs.
I see what you're saying with that analogy, and you're right. Look, the standard bar is a lot higher this season. Everything is in place from the money, off the behind the scenes. They're flying to games. They've got all these extra training ground stuff, more staff. You're hearing a lot of clubs now talking about Ipswich coming with more staff than they've ever seen before, and they've got more equipment than ever before. They've got a target on their backs because everything is tip-top and in place. There's no excuses at all now. And I keep sort of swinging between, at the start of the season, I think I predicted them to finish fourth, and I thought, well, they're coming from a position of finishing 11th last season, and I can almost see it that they'll finish this season wherever, somewhere in the playoffs, and whatever will happen in the playoffs. And then we'll go, well, I suppose they've come from a position of finishing mid-table and it is progress. And was it a big ask to go from a team that finished 11th to suddenly asking them to be a team that finishes first and second? I don't think it is. Teams do turn things around quite dramatically in a 1-year period before. It's not without precedence that a team can go from being at one end of the table to the other with the right level of investment and everything like that, which Ipswich have had. So we are holding them to very high standards now. The analogy about sort of sticking in there and not quite getting over the line, I think that almost paints the picture of sort of a plucky underdog that's sticking at it in games but coming up short. I'm not sure that quite applies to Ipswich, and there have been moments where they have turned up in big games. I thought they turned up in the Derby game. I thought the Plymouth game was a late goal. They've beaten Portsmouth and Peterborough, who, okay, they've faded away a little bit. It's just, I don't know what it is, that little bit of, I don't know, as I said to you, it's really hard to put your finger on what it is that's missing, but there's just something that's missing. Whether it's a little bit of magic, whether it's a little bit of mentality. I don't know what it is, but it feels like all the ingredients are there, but for whatever reason, they're just falling short on one or two occasions. I don't know what it is, but as I said to you, in some ways there needs to be an acceptance of the playoffs. That can't be the mentality of the players, though, because the next 5 games you're looking at, you can go to Bristol Rovers and win, Forest Green and win. There's MK Dons coming up with a huge away following. We keep convincing ourselves that this run of 4 or 5 wins is on the horizon, and then all of a sudden you're flying again. And that has to be their mentality, that they keep attacking all of these games. I've just got this fear that the hope will linger right up until the last minute, and it'll just fall short because the gap's too big, and then it's a real psychological battle to go, right, we didn't quite make it. And we've seen it so many times. Teams that just don't quite make it into the top 2 find it really difficult to go into the playoffs.
You're right, Stu. To be fair, I mean, Kieran McKenna can't stand in front of them today and go, right, lads, playoffs.
Yeah,
it's the playoffs. Top 2's gone. I mean, obviously, he can't do that with 16 games left. But I wasn't saying they're underdogs. I just say the way we talk about them quite often is, well, at least they were competitive in this game. They didn't used to be competitive in these games, and at least they didn't lose this game. What resilience they showed to come back from 1-0 at Cambridge, or
you're right.
2,
we can't keep just in the past. They weren't competitive. At least they competed in every game now. Well, they should be. You're right.
Exactly.
We shouldn't be. Yeah, you're 100% right. We shouldn't be going, well, it used to be. Against Rotherham, they were at arm's length the whole time, and they were comfortably beaten and bullied and outfought, and that's not happening. There isn't a single game this season that I can think of where you'd say Ipswich are outthought, comprehensively outplayed, second best. They've been in every game, and that's the frustrating thing. There's just
But that's what I'm saying is that's the minimum. That's the minimum possible kind of standard that Town should be at.
With the investment and McKenna. You think there's no excuses there now because McKenna's he had 6 months in the job to start with to work out what he wanted and get used to the league and get used to the club. He's got the training ground, the staff, the players, the investment. As I say, flying to games, everything is in place for it to be happening. So it's right to hold them to a high level of account. And yes, we're probably nitpicking. It probably feels to them that we're nitpicking at little things, but that's where they're at. That's the standards that they're being held to now. 16 games to go. And a really big run coming up now because it's really, I know we keep saying it's now or never, but this run of wins really does have to happen now because further down the track, not that much further down the track, they've got to go to Derby, to Bolton, to Barnsley. So we really are in must-win territory now going into these run of next few games.
As we head into that game, those run of games, Rossi, I saw one of your pictures from the weekend, which didn't make me feel too good about things going forward for one player in particular, Lee Evans. You got a picture of him sitting on the bench with essentially some kind of contraption made out of metal around his knee. Now, we know he's injured that knee, but that makes me think that injury is not going to be one that he comes back from quickly, because I know a little bit about knees myself now, unfortunately. And when they put that kind of metal contraption on your leg, that is essentially the strongest possible thing to support the knee, ensure stability in that knee joint. So there must be something quite problematic going on with his knee. And we know he had a knee injury last season, didn't he? So that does not bode well for me.
No, he was walking on his own, but with that, so because he's aided by that, brace or whatever you call it. But not good. I'm sure we'll find out more whenever Stu speaks to McKenna, and I'm sure Evans will be frustrated again because this happened last year. He got the injury that ended his season. He was on a great run this year. He was the same, started the season well, had the injury, then came back quicker than expected, and then the same has happened again. And that's another thing that will come up, I'm sure, unfortunately, is injuries that can stop, that momentum for teams, key players missing because of injuries. Hopefully I've not jinxed it now. Hopefully there's no more injuries for big players. But when I saw Lee Evans walk out, I was, great to see him. But then I was like, oh no. Because at first I was just sort of taking a picture of him, sort of just his face, and he was clapping and saying hello to fans. And I looked down and I went, oh, okay, he's got a brace, which is not great. But yeah, we'll find out more, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope to high heavens they're just being super, super cautious with
Yeah.
that, and they're just trying to protect it as much as possible. But the first thing I think when I see a metal brace on someone's knee is that knee is not in a good way, and they're doing everything they can to support the stability of it. What is the official line on Evans, Stu, from the presser last week? It was essentially it being reviewed, wasn't it?
Yes, and that was repeated by Kieran after the game. Yeah, we'll wait and see, but it's not looking good for all the reasons that you've outlined. Yes, key injuries can derail you, but Ipswich have, again, we're talking about the no excuses thing. Ipswich have future-proofed their squad for that reason. That's why they've boosted their options. There's 2 good players for every position. There shouldn't be anyone really that would get injured that should completely derail what Ipswich Town are trying to do, and that includes Lee Evans with the likes of Luongo. That's why they've signed Luongo for this scenario, and Cameron Humphreys as well, of course, who looks more than ready for men's football at the moment.
Right then. So, having me just declared them not good enough, Stu said there's something missing. Rossi thinks that it's probably going to be the playoffs. Let's talk about these 16 games, shall we? Because they really have got. I mean, now we're serious, Town. You really have got to start winning now. Pull your fingers out, all right? Stop messing around. And that starts tomorrow at Bristol Rovers, Stewie. This is a game that when we looked ahead at February, none of us said they would win. I think we all said draw at Bristol Rovers. What did you say, Rossi? Did you say win?
I said a win, but like a late winner, But
okay, all right. Well, they really. I mean, again, not messing around. You really do need to win this game, Town. All right, at Bristol Rovers. Stu, how are you feeling about this? Because yes, Bristol are what, are they 14th? They're kind of mid-table. They lost at the weekend to Lincoln, but going to Bristol midweek, Joey Barton, all that kind of rah-rah factor. It's not going to be an easy game. There are no easy games in League One, but this is not going to be an easy game. It's the sort of game that makes me worried, and that's even without the poor form that Town are in.
It's a bit like Leif Davis after the game said when the first Sheffield Wednesday goal went in, he turned to Sam Morsey and said, "Right, we need to start playing now." And then the second goal went in, and he said, I turned to Sam Morsey and said, "We really need to start playing now." Yeah, same applies with these next games. On paper, when we were looking a bit further ahead, I thought, Bristol Rovers away midweek, that's a tricky old game. They have lost their last 5 in a row. Bristol Rovers.
Okay.
Yeah, they were on the fringes of the playoffs, weren't they, for the first half of the season? But they've lost 5 in a row now. They lost at Lincoln. I don't know if you've heard it. Joey Barton went peak Joey Barton at the weekend after their 1-0 loss at Lincoln and was offering out Lincoln players for a fight.
Excellent.
While the radio interview was still sort of running in the background. They're moaning a lot about about decisions going against them, red cards, penalties, various things at the moment. They got pumped 5-1 by Morecambe.
Yeah.
After Ipswich beat Morecambe 5-0, Morecambe then went and beat them 5. Barton was talking about that being an embarrassing performance and a rude awakening, and reimbursing their fans that had travelled, stuff like that. So. Against the backdrop of all of that, Ipswich have to go and win. I mean, they dealt with Bristol Rovers pretty comfortably at Portman Road back in September, 2-0. If you remember, they had a couple of players sent off fairly late on. This is you asked me before if Sheffield Wednesday was must win, and I said must not lose. This one is must win. I think for top two. For top 2 now, I think I'm at that stage now where this game has to be won.
And do you know what, Stewie? And I think this is part of we both, obviously, Ross, you've been an Ipswich Town fan your whole life, and you've seen not a lot of success. Me and Stewie have followed Ipswich Town professionally for coming up on 15 years now. And when you trot out stats like that, Stu, they've lost 5 in a row. My first thought is not, Town are going to thump them. My first thought is, well, that's going to stop tomorrow. Town are going to find a way to draw or lose this game. A game they should be winning. Rossi, how are you feeling going into this one?
Yeah, sometimes when I read those stats, haven't won at home or haven't won in many games, I don't know, have kept clean sheets or whatever. But okay, here comes Ipswich Town. Here you go. But do you know what? We've been able to change that a little bit this year. There's been times we've gone to teams and actually kept that rut going for that team. So I'm not fearing too much about that anymore, but there is still that deep down, like, oh, Town are going to come in town thing me. But yeah, Bristol Rovers, we beat them early in the season 2-0 at Portland Road. They had 2 players sent off very late in the game. They also had a player sent off against Lincoln. I think it was Loft, I think, who had a bit of an elbow as well on a player. So little thing there. But do you know what? Weirdly, I'm confident about this game because we need to win. As you said, we need to bloody win. So go on Town, go to Bristol Rovers, get a win. My first ever trip to Bristol Rovers as well. So that would be a new ground to tick off. So hopefully it will be a good ending at that game. But yeah, we need to win. If they don't win, then see you later, top 2.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose, then sayonara, top 2, isn't it? Stewie, what? Clearly, they've got a squad now. They can make changes. Surely Freddie Ladapo is going to start tomorrow. Is there anything else you'd be doing with the side, mixing things up? You like the way Burgess looked playing with Wolfenden? Wolfenden's been the subject of maybe a few lackadaisical moments recently again.
Yeah, he's looked a bit wobbly in the last few games, just a bit. His super strength can also go against him, his sort of ice cool, laid back nature. And yeah, that's sort of that's a bit of a concern at the moment, not knowing his best 2 centre halves. I think this deep into the season, the fact that they're sort of chopping and changing at the moment doesn't bode particularly well. I'm sure there'll be a bit of freshening up, given just the nature of a long trip and another Saturday, Tuesday week. So yeah, Ladapo's got every chance. Hurst has just played 2 back-to-back, having not played a great deal in the first half of the season. Jackson, you may well be pushing for a start after his impressive performances against Burnley. Does he even think about giving Greg Lee a start and giving Leif Davis a bit of a rest? There'll be all of those decisions we talked about going into the Sheffield Wednesday game might now tip the other way. And I would hope that this is where the Ipswich Town squad comes to the fore for a midweek game like this against a Bristol Rovers side that are in a bad place. Yeah, I'm feeling confident about this one. I think Ipswich have shown that when there's a little bit of frustrated noise around them, as there has been for a lot of this podcast, they tend to sort of respond quite well. It's then following that up which has been the problem, hasn't it? It's so yeah, I'll put them down for a win tomorrow night. I think they'll go there and win.
Well, are you going to give it a score?
Yeah, I'll give it I think they could win 3-0.
Oh, be still my beating heart. That's exactly what we need, isn't it? We need them to come out, score early, put it to bed, because we've got early deadlines as well. So if it could be over by half time, that'd be tremendous. Town, sort that out. So you're saying 3-0. Rossi, you said a win, but a scrappy one. Are you going to put a score on it?
I'm going to help your deadline. Actually, I'm not going to do a late winner. That'd be nice for a late winner, but I'm going to go 3-1. Yeah, maybe 3-1. Yeah, as I said, we'll be 3-0 up, and then Bristol Rovers just score consolation.
That'd be fine. Yeah. That'd be perfect. As long as we're 3-0 up, and then they get a late goal, no one really cares. No. So 3-0, 3-1. I have been incredibly bad at predictions my whole life, especially this month. Though I said 3-0 Town at Cambridge United. That didn't happen. I said 2-1 win against Sheffield Wednesday. That didn't happen. And in my look ahead, I said 1-1 at Bristol Rovers. So I've got to stick to that. Hopefully that won't happen, and it will be a big win for Town. That's certainly what we need. And then Stu, on Thursday, we'll be saying, do you know what? It's still on. It's still on this. Look at the games ahead. Who have they got coming to Portland Road? No one coming to Portland Road. They've got tough games away. Yeah, that's fine. They're away though. They can easily win all the games at home. No problem at all. And the top 2's still on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it can turn. And that's the life we as outsiders live, following the club. And as McKenna says, during that game, we're dealing with human beings here. We're dealing with emotions, and it's very easy for us to say they should have handled that better in the moment. I know how I felt watching it from the stands when that penalty was missed. Sort of flat, and Andy and I looked at each other and went, "Oh, no!" And then the goal went in, and you sink again, and you think, well, imagine that intensified actually being out there on the pitch and trying to handle it in that moment. Ipswich struggle, I think, have struggled for me in moments of chaos. They're not comfortable in chaos, and they've got to find a way to become comfortable in the chaos in those moments in games. They're at their best when they're controlled and they're calm and they're a reflection of their methodical, intelligent manager, and they become an extension of him. I'm hopeful that stylistically this game will suit them. Joey Barton talks a lot about them trying to play the right way. I know that he's talked about them having a lot of the ball without purpose and that becoming a theme for them. So when I see quotes like that, I lick my lips, because I think when a team tries to play football against Ipswich, that's certainly a lesser side, then they tend to come out on top. I remember them going to Exeter and just being supremely in control of that game. I'm hopeful that we get another situation like that tomorrow night.
Okay, so 2 wins and a draw. Anything else to mention, friends, as we come to the end of this show, this frustrated show?
I hope this hasn't felt sort of too negative off the back of that, because there was a lot to like from the weekend. That second half performance was really exciting at times. There won't be many teams that have Sheffield Wednesday on the ropes like that this season. So there is a lot to take from that. And if Ipswich do ultimately end up just falling short and finishing in the playoffs, then hopefully that's a game that they can sort of call upon for muscle memory to say, in difficult situations against good opposition, we can find a way to dig ourselves out of a hole. And that's why I think McKenna talks about it potentially being a decisive moment, because we've talked in recent weeks about how that Charlton game maybe had a bit of a psychological effect and damage, lasting impact on them. Well, hopefully those sort of bad memories have now been replaced by some good ones that they can call upon, that they are able to come back in these games and they are able to turn the tide in matches as well, instead of these, there's always going to be a last minute goal coming against us. Those fears have been replaced a little bit by some positive ones from the second half. So I know we've talked quite frustratedly about them not winning, but it wasn't all bad.
No, it wasn't all bad, but they didn't win. So there we go.
Yeah. They were 2-0 down though, Heathy. They were 2-0 down, and they had to come back.
That's what I go back to. Great resilience, character, brilliant. They didn't win the game. It's a game they could have won. So there we go. Friends, that brings us to the end of 52 minutes of frustrated noise, which I liked, Stu. And we could put that as maybe on the poster for the podcast. Frustrated noise. There we go. So friends, I hope you're having a good start to the week despite this frustrated noise. Air fryer, boys. I've got to get this in over the weekend, playing around with the air fryer. Prawn toast in the air fryer, game changer. Pringles coated fried chicken in the air fryer, game changer. Let me tell you, friends, what you do: tube of Pringles, pour them into a bowl, smash them up real small. Flour, egg, chicken strips, flour, egg, and dip them into the Pringles. Whack them in the air fryer until they're cooked. Can't remember the temperature now, but obviously you know when chicken's done. Hopefully, don't serve it pink. It's not steak. But my God, that's good. We did it with smoked bacon Pringles. Fantastic. I'm sure it would work with any flavour Pringles. Get yourself a little dip as well. Prawn toast. Whack it in a blender. Prawns. Bit of chilli, bit of garlic. Get the cheapest white bread you can find. Spread it all over that. Sesame seeds on top. Whack it in the air fryer. Woo! Let me tell you, it's game changer. It's better than anything you'll get from the takeaway. Not got all that MSG stuff in it. It's not deep fried, so it's not leaking grease. Fantastic, friends. So my adventures with the air fryer continue, and at least that is one positive we can take away from the show today. And hopefully, over the coming weeks, I'll be able to bring you more adventures with my air fryer. Friends, all left for me to say then is to support our sponsors. Use the code KOA at manscaped.com for 20% off and free delivery on all the excellent clobber. They've just launched various new lines of things. So get involved with that, including, Ross, I know, beard products, beard oil, beard trimmers, etc., that kind of good stuff. So you'll be using your code KOA. Well, actually, they should be sending us free stuff, to be honest. Manscaped can't sort it out. And also, Ginger Pickle, digital marketing, SEO, search engine optimization, all that good stuff that Stu knows so much about, and having chatted with Tony Southgate. If you like your pickle ginger, Google Ginger Pickle and improve your digital marketing in every possible imaginable way. Right then, friends, anything else as a final word today? Stewie, Rossi, what have you got to say? Nothing or something? Nothing from Stu, nothing from Ross. Okay, excellent. Well then, friends, it's in the books. First pod of the week, 55 minutes of frustrated noise. Hopefully, when we convene again later this week, it'll be an hour or so of excited tones. Have a great start to the week, and we'll speak to you next time.